You've built your entire life on something that's not even real. Maybe it's the number of followers you have, the job title you cling to, or that shiny car in the driveway. But what happens when it all crumbles, when the validation you thought you needed disappears in an instant? Are you still the same person, or are you left scrambling to find who you really are underneath all the layers? This isn't just about ego, it's about facing the raw truth. If everything that made you feel enough was stripped away, would you still recognize yourself? Or would you be lost in chaos? If you're truly committed to your personal growth, now's the perfect moment to take action. Subscribe to our channel Motivation Basics and like this video if you're committed to improve every day. Don't keep this to yourself and share it with someone who's ready to break through their own barriers today. Let's stop talking and start doing this together. Good self-esteem, which is something you cultivate as a human being, becomes unsatisfying and surpassed as you age. Building a solid foundation of self-esteem can take its place. Naturally, self-esteem is the extent to which an individual is pleased with one's own identity, one's personal achievements, one's abilities, one's knowledge, and one's possessions. When evaluating a person, it's common practice to compare their knowledge, skills, and material belongings to their abilities and knowledge. When you compare yourself to other things, you discover that you're superior. That leaves two possible explanations. Either other individuals are less capable than you, or you are capable of more than other people. I can do this, but they can't. On the other hand, your level of knowledge is higher. Are you even vaguely aware that this holds true in this particular situation? Oh, you had no idea about that. Very well, I have something to tell you. You now have a clearer picture of what's going on. These ignorant people, they don't know anything. Maybe your home has more bedrooms than average. How many are there? I count 4. We number 11. What level of education are you currently pursuing? No way. I have 2 doctorate degrees to my name. When a child is alone, it's fine. I can jump farther than you are. I can jump farther than you are. Just wait until you see my capabilities. Furthermore, the child does not find it problematic. It is inappropriate to tell a toddler, "Don't do that, your ego is arising." This assertion serves no use. The child will have to go through it. Thus, it's not conceivable. As we delve deeper into the nuances of ego versus healthy self-esteem, it's crucial to recognize how the ego's reliance on external comparisons can often result in feelings of inadequacy. Consider someone who constantly compares their achievements to others, like a professional who continually measures their success by the success of their peers. For example, imagine a corporate executive who might feel insecure when a colleague gets promoted or recognized for their contributions. Instead of acknowledging their own growth and accomplishments, their sense of self-worth becomes tethered to a hierarchy of comparison. This constant cycle of needing to outdo others to feel good about oneself eventually erodes their inner peace as their value hinges on someone else's perceived success. In his book, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle emphasizes the destructive force of the ego when it clings to comparisons. He writes, "The ego is no more than a thought, and it is a thought that creates an image of self. It is an identification with a mental pattern." Tolle underscores the importance of recognizing that the ego thrives on comparison and attachment to an external identity. The corporate executive who constantly compares themselves to others is locked into a mental pattern of striving for validation through external measures. But as Tolle points out, this creates a false sense of self, a self that is constantly dependent on external circumstances. As you explain it, having healthy self-esteem is preferable than having extremely low self-esteem. This is because healthy self-esteem is more likely to occur. I'm not good. Everybody's better than me. I have nothing. Life has treated me unfairly. In the same way that good self-esteem also contains a self-image, There is also a self-image. There's also a self-image present right there. Of the two, one is obviously considerably more pleasant than the other. One may say that having healthy self-esteem is more pleasurable than having low self-esteem or unhealthy self-esteem. This is because good self-esteem is more positive. However, both of these things are forms of identification, and when you compare the form of who I am to the form of who I am to the form of other people, you find that you are superior in at least one of these areas. Obviously we are, and that is a satisfying fact. You are dependent on others who have less, no less, or are able to do less than you, to put it frankly, for your sense of value or worthiness. However, there is still the fact that you are stuck in form, and you are dependent on them for your sense of value or worthiness. This dependency on external validation is the very essence of ego. Eckhart Tolle touches on this in A New Earth, where he says the ego seeks to enhance itself by identifying with things. This craving for comparison and the constant need to feel superior fuels the ego's drive. But true self-worth doesn't rely on external validation. It arises from within. Healthy self-esteem is not about proving you are better than others. It is about recognizing and honoring your own inherent value. When you place your self-worth in the hands of others, you are bound to feel insecure because the ego is fragile. But when you realize that your worth does not depend on comparison, you can begin to cultivate a stable sense of self-esteem. Healthy self-esteem, in contrast, allows a person to recognize their own strengths without needing to measure them against anyone else. Take the example of an athlete who competes not because they want to be better than others, but because they want to push themselves to reach their own personal best. This athlete understands that their worth is not diminished by another's achievements, but rather it grows through their own improvement. It's this sense of inner validation that fosters long-term confidence and contentment. When you move from comparison to self-awareness, you create an internal environment where your value is intrinsic, not based on what others think or what you accomplish for validation. That is not a problem. This does not imply that you should not make an effort to accomplish great things, to acquire stuff, or to acquire knowledge. However, the question that needs to be answered is whether or not that is a satisfactory foundation for your sense of who you are. This is not the case over the course of time. It does not fulfill my needs. It is for this reason that people who are very content with what they have tend to have a sensation of emptiness after some time has passed. This emptiness is not the same as the spiritual emptiness or the sense of emptiness that comes from asking, what's it all about? Even things that you are able to accomplish, there may come a moment when you are no longer able to do them, regardless of what it is that you do that is so wonderful. In The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle invites readers to look beyond the ego-driven cycle of seeking fulfillment through external achievement. He writes, "You are not a form. You are not a formless, timeless awareness behind the form." This realization shifts the focus away from the transient world of accomplishments and comparisons, allowing for a deeper sense of self that does not depend on the ego's fragile need to measure up. The pursuit of personal growth, relationships, and inner peace becomes more fulfilling when we let go of the need to define ourselves by external markers of success. However, a shift from ego-based self-worth to healthy self-esteem is not always easy. Let's look at a real-life example. A successful entrepreneur who has built a multi-million-dollar company. Early in their career, they might have defined themselves solely by their business achievements, finding satisfaction only in the next deal or acquisition. Over time, they may begin to feel burnout, questioning their purpose beyond the accolades. Eventually, this person might realize that their worth isn't tied solely to their professional success. This realization often marks a transition from an ego-driven sense of self to one grounded in deeper values, such as personal growth, relationships, and contribution to the community. It's only through this shift that true peace and fulfillment begin to emerge. Eckhart Tolle's wisdom is particularly relevant here. He suggests, when you become comfortable with the idea of not knowing who you are, you've reached the beginning of understanding who you are. The entrepreneur who comes to understand that their worth is not defined by the size of their business empire begins to peel away the layers of ego, embracing a deeper, more authentic sense of self. Do you have an exceptional ability to play an instrument like the piano? Why not pursue your dream of becoming a virtuoso? But what happens if your identity becomes tied to this skill, and one day you discover you have a condition, like arthritis, that limits your dexterity? Suddenly, what once defined you is no longer available. Consider another scenario. You create the most advanced piece of technology, a groundbreaking software, for instance. Everyone praises it as the best in its class. But as time passes, someone else comes up with something even more innovative, and within a few years, your creation is obsolete. You're left feeling irrelevant, as if you've fallen from being someone remarkable to just another forgotten name. But in both cases, the problem lies in the illusion of identity formed by something external and transient. Your sense of self becomes entangled in the fleeting world of form, which is unstable, unreliable, and ultimately illusory. True self-worth, however, is not derived from physical appearance or external accomplishments. It comes from detaching from the transient nature of the material world. At that point, what we call self-esteem starts to shift into something far more profound. When you come to realize that true power emanates from the formless, deeper aspect of yourself, a new awareness of your inherent strength and value emerges. This understanding transcends your personal identity, grounding you in something beyond form, an experience of worthiness that isn't tied to any particular accomplishment or role. It is a sense of power that exists not as a comparison, but as an inherent truth. Eckhart Tolle, in his transformative work, The Power of Now, offers a profound insight into this. He writes, "You are not your mind. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them." What he speaks to is the realization that our sense of self that is rooted in external achievements, appearances, or possessions is a creation of the ego, a temporary construct that is ultimately unsatisfying. When we awaken to the formless aspect of ourselves, as Tolle encourages, we transcend the ego's limitations and touch upon the true essence of who we are, a deep, unshakable sense of worth that is not tied to external things but comes from the core of our being. Lastly, it's worth noting that ego doesn't necessarily disappear overnight, and this process of transitioning to healthy self-esteem is gradual. A perfect example of this is someone who has lived most of their life seeking validation through external achievements, only to find that as they age, they become more introspective. Consider an elderly artist who has spent their life creating masterpieces. They may reach a point where they no longer care about exhibitions or critical acclaim, but instead find joy in the act of creation itself. It is in this place of acceptance that the artist realizes their value is not in the art they produce, but in the experience of creation itself. They transcend the ego's need for external recognition and step into a deeper sense of self-worth that is unshaken by the opinions or approval of others. This exemplifies how, with time and introspection, one can transcend ego and embrace the true essence of self-esteem. Neither is it greater than. To you, every single person possesses the same level of worthiness, even if they are not yet aware of it for themselves. It appears that there is power, but not more. There is the power of life itself, and you are aware that every single person is an expression of that power, even if they are not aware of it at the moment themselves. Every single person. To put it another way, you go beyond the traditional definition of self-esteem, and this does not mean that you lose your sense of value. It shifts into something that is far more profound. In his book, A New Earth, Eckhart Tolle explains, the ego is always looking for validation from others, but true self-worth is not based on approval from others. It is based on the realization that you are inherently worthy, simply by being. This idea encapsulates the shift from the ego-driven need for external validation to a more profound sense of self-worth that comes from within, a recognition of one's inherent value that cannot be taken away by external circumstances. True self-esteem, as Tolle suggests, is not about comparison or seeking validation, but about acknowledging the deeper, unchanging essence of who we are. Therefore, every single human being is, and it's possible that there are even some children in this day and age that don't have to go through the egoic stage anymore. This is not impossible. However, in the past, it was necessary for humans to go through the stage where they identified with their physical appearance, developed some self-esteem, and engaged in activities that made them feel good about themselves. It is likely that many people still have to go through this stage. But after that, the moment comes to go on, with the possible exception of those mature souls, as I mentioned earlier, who may be entering this world already as children and who do not even need to identify with it anymore. If a person has low self-esteem, or, to put it another way, a mental image of not being good enough, then does that person have to go through the stage of healthy self-esteem before they can transcend it entirely? This is a question that arises from the previous inquiry. No, I am not sure. It hasn't been enough time for me to try it with enough folks. In the event that your bad self-esteem causes you to experience a great deal of suffering, it is possible that you will be able to transition from that condition to a state in which you have no self with the assistance of a teacher. When compared to the path that leads from superficial enjoyment to transcendence, the one that leads from unhappiness or suffering to transcendence is seen to be more straightforward. Your bliss on the surface will keep you in the dream world for a considerable amount of time. Tolle asserts the primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but your thoughts about it. This rings true for those who are stuck in the trap of low self-esteem, often identified with a negative mental image of themselves. They believe that their worth is determined by their past mistakes or perceived failures. However, as they begin to shift their awareness from these thoughts to a deeper sense of being, they can begin to transcend their ego's grip and move towards a healthier, more authentic self-esteem. This process requires courage and introspection, but can lead to a more profound inner peace. In essence, the transition from an ego-driven sense of self to healthy self-esteem is not about gaining more or achieving more in the external world, but rather about moving inward, to recognize that the true essence of who we are is not the titles, possessions, or accomplishments we identify with, but the deeper, formless consciousness that lies beyond them. Tolle's teachings remind us that we are not the sum of our achievements or appearances, but the awareness behind them. It is this awareness that grants us a true sense of self-worth, independent of external validation, and provides the foundation for lasting peace and fulfillment. Stop wasting time and make every moment count in your life. Subscribe to Motivation Basics for daily motivational videos on personal growth. Show your commitment by liking the video and commenting the word GROW. Be sure to share it with someone who needs to slow down in life. We're in this together.